that NASA, Starfleet, Star Trek reality love. Yes, episode 304 of Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trekland Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and Trekland Treks and everything else for some clarity, sanity, and the big picture in everything Star Trek. If you're watching us later on the archive YouTube, hey, I wish you could join us live sometime, like this bunch is about to do. But let me dumb into this. First off, we have the breaking news. We got the breaking news. Can you see this? As I was intimating earlier, Michelle Yeoh, Section 31 show announced as a special movie event. Don't you love TV marketing? As we were saying, it turns out through my sources that Michelle Yeoh's schedule window was only this fall for the next few years. She had no spare time to do a Section 31 because her movie card dance is filled up. Movie dance card is filled up. Thanks to that Oscar, but thanks to her career being busy even before she won the Oscar. She was an Oscar nominee for several months before she was an Oscar winner. And she's just an awesome person, and her brand is just on a peak right now. So this makes all the sense in the world. Now, does Section 31 begin and end as a TV movie event? In the old days, it would have been a TV movie of the week. These days, they're throwing enough budget at it that could easily be shown in theaters, I'm thinking, as a standalone movie. But is it an end to itself? Is it the introduction to a series? Is this even something we haven't had since Where No Man Has Gone Before? Is this actually a pilot that needs to sell the series here in the wake of the retrenching that all the streamers are doing, that Paramount Plus is tightening its belt a little bit? Are they actually going to have to see the result? Now, there were probably contracts in play to have her do something with Section 31. This may be that. I'm totally speculating here. But I could see this playing out as one of two or three happy results. At the very least, they get Michelle Yeoh playing Georgiou, as promised all along, in a Section 31 format. And then it's a standalone, or maybe if it's big enough, they make a series out of it, or they tweak in the movie and make changes going in. It's just a lot. Nothing is a huge rollout in the old days, in the Berman era, or as we've seen so far. That could be the reason for this announcement. It could be a totally one-off project with no hope of going forward. The thinking could have changed so much around it with fast-moving currents, which is interesting for what that means for hashtag Terry Trek and hashtag Star Trek Legacy. I don't know. Does that clear the decks? If it doesn't, so many questions. We will find out the answers soon, but just some things to chew on. We've been so busy here in the cave dealing with the Picard situation and life that the long term there hasn't popped up yet. But it's going to be an interesting, exciting, crazy year. It's already been that, though. It's already been that. Speaking of Picard, that gets me to the topic today, that NASA, Starfleet, Star Trek reality love. And what I mean by that is, I mentioned it last week, but we just had a successful Yuri's night here, and Yuri's night is a 10-year-old. It's just now getting on the radar of a lot of folks, long-range scans. But Yuri's night is a global event that's marking humanity's first contact with space, basically, when Yuri Gagarin, the Soviet cosmonaut, made his flight April 12th, 1961. And so the last 10 years or so, there's been a celebration started here in LA, spread around the world to mark that. Not so much slavishly just recreating, a cosmonaut's flight that was historic and to the detriment of anything else, but just as that a marker to celebrate our future in space, our future based on science, excitement, futurism, not just space travel, but the technologies that are being unleashed for the good. And yes, those that we have to keep an eye on. Almost any new technology has an upside and a downside. Nobody's being Pollyanna here, but it's all of that, plus the excitement, the inspiration of our science fictional worlds have brought us to help all those scientists and engineers and future imaginationers, those who are looking into the future life in space and here on Earth. And it has spread. There were several markers around the Space Coast, Florida, around Cape Canaveral, had theirs on the other weekend, just last weekend. But I was privileged to go down this year. I was privileged to be an invited special guest, not just a name on the list. We've gone a couple of times. This year's was the biggest of all. They're trying to expand the program, the celebration. Yeah, it's a fundraiser for everything at the California Science Center, especially the new Endeavour space shuttle. This is getting local, but they're building housing a new facility to stack it on its tail as it would be in launch configuration with external tank. It's been down for what, 10 years now? Yikes. When the shuttles were distributed around the country, the Endeavour came to LA. It was a huge thing of landing at LAX and then bring the special route they prepared. There's a documentary. It's amazing, but it's inspiring too. And letting future generations know this is it right here. That was kind of all in the mix in the Zen zeitgeist for where Yuri's night was coming from, but it's a dance. It's some speakers, celebrities, a lot of booths, a lot of vendors set up in the otherwise museum spaces. It's just a great night for all kinds of mixing of people to do. And this last couple of weekends ago was a great mix for more Star Trek celebs than ever. Shout out to my friend Amy Imhoff for coming on board to set that up. And a ton of real life astronauts and space heroes all getting to say, oh, you're the hero. No, you're the hero. No, you're the hero. And it was interesting timing. It was a huge event, and it was going all over the world. Now, not every site, the Moscow site, the New York, DC site, whatever, the Space Coast site in Florida. We're not all privy to so many celebrities and stars, celebrities in the space and science fields, right? But not so many TV and not so many Star Trek stars. And the Orville cast and crew were there to pick up a special award too. So not every site was privy to looking like it was a con in disguise. But the intention was there, and there were some real life superheroes from in the space world. We wouldn't say in front of the camera and behind the camera. We would say, like, in the cabin and behind the cabin. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Folks on the ground who made it possible, the folks who flew missions, folks who braved the pioneering spirit and the frontier. No, not Frontier Day. And that's what it was all about. And even folks who would never set foot in a space capsule. I mean, they'll never get the chance to. That's not their thing. They're thinking about change in the future right here on Earth. And that's and the inspirations behind it. And making it real. Making it real here. Not escaping Earth, that thing about Plan B. No. It's nobody abandoned England just because North America was settled or colonized. I know. Problematic history, but it happened. The originator of the spread doesn't dry up and blow away just because the outreach happened. And that got me to thinking, looking back, it's a past event. It happens. We all know it. I've talked for years about the mutual love affair between NASA and Star Trek. And it wasn't just visitors coming to Star Trek sets over the years. It goes back to the early days. It goes back to Gene Roddenberry and Jimmy Doohan taking visits out at JPL. It goes back, black and white photos of them visiting and Jimmy Doohan asking questions because he has engineering in his background. It goes back to those great shots. It's a Mariner flight, the first one to land on Mars or crash into Mars, and the NASA guys at consoles in the 60s with their little white shirts and ties and their horn rimmed glasses, wearing Spock ears. It goes back that far. It's always been there. The NASA Star Trek, love connection, mutual love affair. I've always called it. And I personally can vouch for walking through Houston Spacecraft Center and being introduced to people, high and low. 3/4 of them would say, I'm here because of Star Trek. It's just a phenomenon. And that's why this season of Picard, to flip this coin, the other side of this has been people are what are we doing? We're shipping all the relationships. People are loving seeing Picard Beverly. People are laughing seeing Worf and Raffi. People are enjoying seeing where the Troy Rikers are going. LeVar and his daughters and his mystery wife mother, whoever she may be. But so much Jack and Beverly, Jack and Sydney. I mean, it's, and Raffi and Seven. We have one more episode to go here about them. But so many, the world and Shaw. RIP spoilers. But there's that, of course, Star Trek is, I mean, the zine movement fostered, because of Spock and Vulcans, the zine movement fostered organized fandom and breakaway media fandom from lit fandom that led us to today's Comic-Cons. So you're welcome, Comic-Con world. Thanks, Star Trek. There is all of that. But the other side of the coin was Star Trek, of course, and the futurism and just the concepts and ideas. I have my 5 C's of Star Trek's popularity. Concept, the futuristic, diverse, respectful, egalitarian world with cool tech. But one of the other C's, aside from canon and characters and casting, is commentary. My point here is that as much as we love the characters and the fiction and the story, yeah, it's the canon side. Today we say it's world building. Word didn't exist in 1966. Another thing that Star Trek pioneered the name for the need for all these words and names and the need for the internet to get the information out faster than paper and stamps. Nothing had been seen like it before. And of course, things like flip phones and iPads, inspiring people to do that. But that is the world. I think of this because there's so much going on. People in marketing offices in New York and LA, they have no idea what my friend Dave Blass is doing with that what getting the original art team back. Mike and Denise Akuda and Doug Drexler and Jeff Mandel, the whole video team, a lot of them. Who am I leaving out here? Alan Kobayashi. I mean, there's so many of those folks. I'm mad because I'm leaving people out. Monica Fedrick. There's so many people who are the fandom looks at as art gods, but it's the world building. It's that continuity. It's that we know we're home. It's that groundedness. And of course, the sidebar here is, all the ship porn. All the tech heads, and we love them. I make fun of them. In a simpler time, I was right there with you tracking the Okudograms before anybody was doing my frame grabs in the 90s and trying to track the classes and the ships and the numbers and seeing the genius that Mike was bringing to that. All that subversive continuity that he wasn't getting paid for, that he was just trying to keep a handle, do a little better than the original series had done with awareness they did as so many fronts. From tracking room numbers on doors in the Enterprise, in the D, having a system for it, everything, the roots of our stellar cartography layout, just basically the quadrant system eventually when a script called for it, coming up with that. So everything that sprung from that increasingly over the years gave us the world of Gene Roddenberry, the 24th century. And I'm laughing at that because of all the love Dave Blass is cranking out these ships. And of course, now we've married Star Trek Online and even Star Trek Adventures. And people, a minority, but a big chunk of fandom are just creaming their pants over the ship tech. And the fact that someone took this much attention to it, and whether or not it was the attention paid to getting it on camera, the backfill, the graphic wall that we just had in episode 9 Vox was enough to keep you going for days. We've come so far since the net at the Romulan neutral zone during the Klingon Civil. I remember having 12 or 15 ships and trying to frame grab that and then do it on my forehead so I could read everything without writing to Mike Okuda, who I barely knew then, but getting all the ships and NCC registry numbers, because someone took the time to do that. And it was a mix of ships we'd heard of and ships we hadn't. It goes back to there. A Mary Sue starship on the wall above the Commodore's office on the Starbase that Greg Jean famously sat down in the 60s, early 70s and tried to match NCC numbers to. That was Matt Jeffries as a one-man art department doing graphics as well as blueprint. It's amazing to me what stone knives and bearskins they had to work with in the 60s. And gave the inspiration for all of this that today is blossoming with Dave and Liz Kloskowski showing off the video. I had to repost it too. It's in my Instagram stream. Hey, follow me on Instagram if you haven't. But just that wall of ships and numbers made so many people happy. And there's homages in there, of course, and some real world science and some real history in it that's cool to where it's almost like little miniature Google Doodles. You can learn a little bit about people. Check out, as I said in Second Opinion, check out the USS Ross. But you sit back and you look at that, and yeah, there's lots of tech love in Star Wars, and you can get droid maintenance manuals, and you can get, X-wing fighter, and that's cool. That's part of Star Wars' longevity. But nothing matches the depth that's there, and the depth of love for it that's in the world building on the tech side, and specifically the ships of the line calendar that's now in its 20th year, 21st, 22nd year, that Doug oversees for the vast majority of that. And it's not a contest between the franchises. This is what's uniquely Star Trek. And as I sat here as the days go by, and I laugh, and laugh with, I smile at so much. I mean, when the tech heads get off on whether or not the Odyssey class has enough phaser banks to keep up with its needs, and how many, I mean, I'm not there in the weeds anymore, but I've been there over the years. Hey, I was the first one to talk to Alice Yeager about the 4 CGI ships. I got those details out in the companion chapter way before they were out there anywhere else. And of course, this is pre-memory alpha and pre-internet. So guys, I've been there tracking as much of this shit as I could. And I say that lovingly. As much of the anal detail is out there. I put a ton of my life into trying to do it, as much as with planets and stars, the ships. But it's just, now it's just gone. And now that it's such an industrialized thing that's gamified for the needs of, say, Star Trek Online, even Star Trek Adventures, for Ben Robinson and the ships collection and all the detail and data that's in there. We have this whole community. And I'm just smiling because I'm thinking how many of that in that circle in the Venn diagram of the ship love community, the ship nerds, how much of that overlaps the Venn diagram for Yuri's Night. And this amazing mix of the real and the fictional, but smartly fictional. We talk about this all the time, but it just struck me how this is two ends the same tunnel, two ends the same candle, both burning bright. I don't know. It's two sides of the coin, but what it's all about, the mutual love affair of NASA and Star Trek, and the devotion. Gene started Star Trek to make commentary on the human condition, and by God, he's done that. And everyone who's taken up the mantle since then has done that. And if you're sitting back wondering, gosh, as excited as we are for everything about Picard, for all the member berries and nostalgia porn folks out there talking about this season of Picard, totally apart from the ship-pornistas, totally apart, is there any there to this season? I want to see, and I've got my screener. I haven't seen it yet, so just shoot me. I want to see what's the philosophical core of this season. Once you take away, the reunion aspect, once you take away all the ship love, what is this season going to be remembered for? I have a suspicion. For one thing, the diversity in Starfleet captains is going to be a big field of acceptable, rough around the edges captains who are not all out of the plastic action hero mold. I have a suspicion about that. And I think we saw some of it bubbling up in episode 9. But that's a core thing that a month or 2 or 3 from now, from some of these feels, you'll never separate yourself from the feels, like you'll never separate, if you were there, from the feels of Mr. Worf Fire, just to name one. But the residual, what everybody who comes along later is going to glean from this season, these 10 chapters of Picard, of Star Trek, that's out there. But apart from that, I'm sitting here looking at the ship love. I'm sitting here looking at the NASA love. And it just reminds me, I say this too, it's what is unique about Star Trek over any other inspirational, fun, cool, adventuresome, geeky franchise that inspires and motivates people to such devotion. It's the groundedness. It's the groundedness in reality, in humanity. Yeah, it's future projected science. And yes, as they said, even back in the 60s, our Star Trek characters are not really the way people live in the 23rd and 24th and now 25th centuries, or even in the 32nd century. Star Trek is still a reflection of us. If we could, if we go back 500 years, how did people, medieval times, Shakespearean times, Elizabethan times, the Asian cultures, day-to-day life for people, now the academics are madly trying to grab onto that and differentiate the centuries between us. Language is a key. The artifacts and art and culture is a key that we can find relics of, much less written records. We know that projecting forward, the humanity that we see and our humanity interaction with aliens and bipedal bumpy heads, different colors. I mean, the humanoid figure, unless we have enough budget to throw some 10C out there at us. Thank you, Discovery. We know that this is a projection of us in the future. And for all the future forward projecting science, things we can't predict. We couldn't predict. You watch a movie from the 90s now, and who can predict? We were watching War Games the other day and just thinking what a difference, not just more advanced computers, but just cell phones. Just the availability of not just tech and communication, but databases and mapping, what that's doing and how it's changing us, our brains, much less our culture. So yeah, no one's sitting here saying that Star Trek is what it's going to be like 300, 400, 500 years from now, or 800 years from now. But it's a grounded world. It's a unique world, and it does relate back to us. And that is why both of these segments that have crossed my desk recently, the NASA Star Trek Mutual Love Affair, and just enjoying the hell out of watching Starship World enjoy itself, and think there's a mutual connection here. There's a mutual reason, and it's what not only is Star Trek, but it's what makes Star Trek unique from any other franchise out there. And as I always say, not that it's a contest, but there is just nothing like Star Trek out there. It's not a fight me thing. It's just fact. I'd love to hear some counter facts, but I've grappled with this over the years. I haven't been a big, what's the secret of Star Trek's success over 50 years? I don't dwell on that, but sometimes it comes around and slaps you in the face and you have to think about it. And I don't know if that's occurred to you. It warms my heart to see so many aspects to Star Trek fandom that was recognized in the beginning. But this is a unified story that even if the commentary track isn't your thing, even if shipping isn't your thing, number one, even if the tech side isn't your thing, even if the great writing and acting and casting and the production value of what people are able to wring out of smaller than they ought to have budgets, much less time. There's the TV production aspect. And yeah, there's the canon and continuity and all of that to keep up. I mean, there's so many fandom strings to Star Trek, and they all, in the best Star Treks, they all get wrapped up together. And even if it's not your favorite thread in Star Trek, you appreciate it. And maybe you don't even consciously appreciate it. And you should. I know I have been guilty of that at times. I took Star Trek for granted in some ways. Anyway, I don't know if this has struck a chord with anyone today. Anybody watching later gets you thinking. There's no good or bad. We have lots of delightful, total flights of fancy, goofy. In fact, there's a whole world of fantasy that tries to break away from as much as it can, right? I mean, we have fantasy aspects that have nothing to do with our real world. But for those who enjoy the projection forward, even to history and historical parallels and cycles and allegories, there's nothing like Star Trek. So enjoy this peak Picard time. We will see what the future brings, but just look around at times when you're enjoying yourself, you're so immersed, realize what this franchise and what this series, this season is doing for folks. And sure, maybe you're a follower, maybe you're a NASA kid like I was, and maybe you could care less about the hard sciences, but you appreciate what Star Trek, the little taste Star Trek is giving you. It's all cool. So the strike authorization vote, which doesn't mean a strike, it's just a poll of the members, the East and West Coast Writers Guilds together, the yes vote was 9,020, The no vote was 198. So that's almost 98% to 2%. 78% of the eligible writers voted. So you've got a voting turnout of 79%, and 97%, 98% of them say yes. So what that does is just show the producers that they're united and that they will go on strike if they don't get what they want. And it would be disastrous. We're just coming out of the shutdowns from COVID, the inflation wave after that, the delay. As the LA Times writer said, she did not want to see 4 months of late night talk show hosts doing shows from their living rooms again. I polled a couple of our Star Trek head honchos and I said, so are we close to a strike? And one of them said, nah. So it's like, because of this overwhelming turnout number, it looks that hopefully, we'll never say never. I'm just disappointed that the Fox Dominion lawsuit was settled. I want to see that dragged through court. But on a different note, with luck, and here's the thing, a lot of the series coming up the next year, it's in the can for the animateds as well, right? I'm betting, as long as they've been working on it, I'm betting the Michelle Yeoh special movie event is all written out, and they're going to produce. They'll still keep tweaking on it, but it's supposed to go into production in the fall. When she in production ahead of time, but I'm still, a couple of people here and there are working on bits and pieces for it. The effects of a writer's strike now, in the next month, if it goes on for a month or 2 or 3, may not show up in the network series, but it may not show up on streamings. They've been stockpiling. They've been stockpiling scripts. They've been rushing production to have that. And that's part of the defenses, the fortifications against a strike, which, thought sometimes you think that's going to strengthen your hand. But this is all about, as much as we struggle with 10 episode seasons, it's all about how that wrecked the old money situation. It's how writers made their money. It's how writers made a living. They could afford to live in. Not all of them, just like with actors, not every writer is a star writer. They're not all showrunner producers. They're just working journeyman writers, and the younger ones are trying to work their way up. And even the mid-level writers are just getting along. They don't have palatial mansions. They don't have tons of residuals until they get into the producer line, over the top, above the line. Some of them right above over the top, but that's a different story. As happened in 07-08, the famous one that we have the picture that went 3 months because it was an adjustment to new media. Well, this is the next generation of new media as the seasons adjusted and everything's gone to streaming and away from lineal terrestrial 26, 22 episode seasons. It's totally messed up the income flow. And there's not as we talked about, there's not the freelance work. When there's only 10 slots, you don't need to have a third of your shows be written by freelancers. There's not that work. So more and more people are coming in, not by pitching as a freelancer, but getting a job as a writer's assistant and working your way up. There might be residual. Well, by fall, if they struck now, hopefully it wouldn't be going on for 6 months if they really do shoot in the fall. But if the directors and actors go out in sympathy strikes, because all the contracts are the same time. And remember in the 07-08, we had a lot of sympathy actors and directors walking the picket lines, including the Star Trek Day at Paramount, which wasn't that Paramount was especially bad. It was a big Vogue thing to have that Ron Moore started, I think, with Sci-Fi or Universal. And the granddaddy of them all had so many writers involved that a Star Trek theme strike made sense. As I say on Second Opinion, it's just something I wanted to say. Before I go any further, I, of course, want to thank all of our Patreon folk in our TTL club, Trekland Tuesdays Live Club. So thank you, Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Galinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Pranakasha Productions, Ryan, and Andrew Jasimski, and our TTL. The card's getting so crowded these days. Our TTL, I know. I say no more. Be careful what I wish for, Lieutenant. I might get it. Our live wires: Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Halbert Gunn Johnson, Alan Hohensey, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shafsky. I would really be honored if, in my small way, in a small way, if you could help us out here with the live stream aspects of everything Trekland. It's a $5 or $10 level, very simple, at patreon.com/TreklandLive. Love you doing that for a shout out. And probably that time that I threw a few more bio shrimps on the Barbie there for the $10 folk for the live wires. Our first few generations of Portal 47. See these folks back here? This is like a fraction of the Portal 47 backstage guests we've had over the years. That's what the $10 folk get. This week, a new episode of the Trek Files is up too. I want to make sure you know about it. It's Jonathan Frakes. We make a little Star Trek history, I think. It's such a cool moment. It wasn't even planned. It just happened. And then I have hope you don't understand. We went a little overtime with Jonathan. It's close to maybe half an hour, 25 minutes this week. But it's a great conversation and some fun stuff. And maybe, I think, hopefully even some bits he was surprised to think about. So hopefully, again, not the same old. Jonathan Frakes, second visit with us on the Trek Files, wherever fine podcasts are caught, podcast.roddenberry.com. The documents, which you want to see, of course, are at our hub on Facebook at the Trek Files. You want to see that. And hey, it's April. You're thinking about spring and summer and fall. And we're hoping, although it's still out there, but I'm hoping we're unclenching from the pandemic. So if you're coming to LA, if you're thinking you might, I just want to throw this out there. You might want to spend the day with your own real live away mission and take a Trekland Treks with me. I will help you set it up. You get in touch with me. We'll work out the day, the details, weekend, weekday. I'll guide you. We'll go to 4 sites. We'll have a fast food lunch. I will be your prop wrangler. I'll be your cosplay photographer. Whatever you want to do, we'll work it out. Your interest. There's over 40 places. Thank you, Picard Season 2. There's over 40 places around greater LA that we can choose from. We'll go to 2 big ones, 2 little ones. Treklandtreks.com. Check it out. Maybe put that on your radar. And nothing to stop you from doing a couple of days. Don't let me do that. We have special days ahead of time like we just did with the cruise folks. But Trekland Treks is available to everyone all day long. And just to say that, we have rebooked this next July. Next July in 2024, we're also reoffering with Geek Nation Tours, exploring Trek. This is a 10-day LA and San Francisco tour. So just put that on your radar. Yes, it's a big ticket. It's 10 days. It's its own event. No tie into a convention. If you're interested, or if you know someone who is, get in touch with me. We'll be talking more and more about that as it comes up because we've got over a year to go. That's another experience that nobody thought about a few years ago. Hey gang, thanks so much for joining us again. I think that's pretty much it. Just, I'm always there on Twitter at LarryNemecek.com. YouTube, where you are now, please like and subscribe. Hey, you can subscribe on Twitter too. It's my biggest platform, but we've had a couple of tweets lately that were huge. It's been a lot of fun. We've had engagement like nowhere before. Thank you, Picard. But, Facebook, Instagram especially, and YouTube. Please like us and follow us. And I said, if you're really curious about what we do all year long, the mini-con all year long, portal47.net, check that out. You might want to jump in with the Portales as well. That's going to do it for now. If you're leaving us on YouTube right now, maybe you can join us live sometime. We're here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And I'd love to see you back here sometime and jumping in the chat and taking part. Piece of real space news I forgot to mention just now. The SpaceX, I know, problematical owner these days, but SpaceX itself, for all the people that work there and have worked so hard and done so many amazing things. The SpaceX Starship heavy stack booster with capsule attached, unmanned, was supposed to launch Monday night. It's been reset to an hour window, Thursday morning, 9:30 to 10:30 Eastern, 6:30 to 7:30 Pacific. So we're all fingers crossed for that. They had a fueling issue last night, had to postpone for a few days. Just, again, to reflect the real space, fake space nature of Star Trek and everything we do. So good luck to everybody at SpaceX with that launch on Thursday. Meanwhile, I'm out of here for now. Hope you can join us live sometime if you're not already with us live. Second Opinion comes out every Saturday. I hope you can join it. It's a shorty. It's YouTube. My thoughts on the passing Trek episode of the week or whatever the news is in a short form, very targeted. No chat, just me. But I'd love you to respond. There's one for every season, every episode of Picard this year. You've been following along? I wish you would. But that is it. I'm just going to say, gang, please, please, please. I mentioned it before, but the COVID is out there. I still hear of at least 1 or 2 people a week. Hopefully everybody is boosted and vaxxed and it's a more annoyance, but contagions are there. We're going to be learning to live with it. So, just do all the things. It is annoying if you come down now, thankfully. Not scary, just annoying. You have done all the things, right? Then it shouldn't be scary. But yeah, do that and stay woke. Check your sources. A lot of weird shit going out there flying by. And trek well.